The rain fell in thin silver threads over downtown Los Angeles, washing neon reflections across the wet pavement. Inside the rooftop bar of the Lexington Hotel, laughter rose and faded like waves. Glasses chimed, cameras flashed, and a crowd of executives toasted to another hollow victory. Ethan Cole stood apart from them, tall, precise, the youngest tech millionaire in the city. The tailored suit fit him like armor, the practiced smile hiding a quiet fatigue. He had everything people fought for, yet he felt nothing at all. Across the room, Aria West balanced a tray of champagne flutes. Her leather jacket broke the dress code, her messy bun a small rebellion. She had taken the job for one night only. The agency called last minute, the rent was late, and her father's hospital bills waited in a drawer. At the bar, Ethan's best friend Marcus leaned closer with a grin. "You are too serious, man. Pick a girl, any girl, and marry her. I dare you." The crowd burst out laughing, phones already rising to record. Someone shouted, "Come on, Ethan! Prove it!" Ethan's jaw tightened. His empire had been built on never backing down. "You think I will not?" he said evenly. His eyes swept the room and stopped on her. Aria was arguing with a customer who tried to touch her wrist. Her voice was steady, her spine unbent. In a room full of masks, she looked painfully real. Ethan stepped forward. The crowd parted in silence as he reached her counter. She set the tray down, her eyes defiant. "If you are here to complain about your drink, get in line." "I am not complaining," he replied, calm and amused. "I am making you a proposal." Her brows lifted. "A proposal? You do not even know my name." "Then tell me," he said, "and I will tell you mine at the altar." Her laugh was sharp. "You are drunk." "Completely sober," Ethan said. "Marry me. One night. One headline. You will receive $500,000 and the freedom to walk away." The bar went silent. Aria searched his face for a trace of irony and found none. Behind his arrogance, she saw something hollow, almost wounded. "You think you can buy dignity with your money?" she asked quietly. "I think I can buy honesty," he said. The tension cracked the air. People leaned closer. Cameras blinked red. Aria exhaled, tired of humiliation disguised as humor. Maybe it was anger, maybe it was pride, but she heard her own voice before she could stop it. "Fine. If you want to marry someone for a dare, marry me. And when it ends, I hope you remember how it feels to lose your soul in public." Gasps rippled through the room. Ethan's lips curved, not in victory but fascination. He extended his hand. "Then it is a deal." Her palm at his warm, trembling, real. Flashbulbs exploded like fireworks, freezing the moment. The billionaire and the rebel girl, bound by a reckless promise neither understood yet. Outside, the rain grew heavier, beating against the glass walls. Somewhere beneath the thunder, Aria heard her own whisper, "What have you just done?" Ethan's hand did not release hers. His voice dropped low. "You will not regret this." She looked up, her eyes burning. "I already do." Rain still covered Los Angeles the next morning, washing the city in gray light. Aria sat at the edge of her narrow bed, staring at the contract spread open on her kitchen table. The paper looked unreal, like a scene she had dreamed. Her name was there in black ink, beside his Ethan Cole. She had said yes in front of hundreds of people. She had shaken his hand. She had heard herself promise something that should have ruined her life. But the cameras had recorded it, and now the internet was devouring her face, her name, her story. The bartender who said yes. Her phone buzzed nonstop, strangers offering opinions, brands asking for interviews, tabloids calling her a gold digger. She turned it face down and closed her eyes. The memory of last night replayed in flashes, the laughter, the dare, the heavy rain against the glass. She could still feel Ethan's hand, steady and cold as a contract. A knock startled her. When she opened the door, a woman in a dark suit stood outside, holding a folder. "Miss West? I am from Cole Dynamics Legal Affairs. Mr. Cole asked me to deliver this." Inside the folder were typed pages, "Agreement of marriage and confidentiality. 3 months. Public appearances required. Financial compensation listed at $500,000. And a single line at the bottom. Either party may end the contract at any time, with no emotional claim or personal attachment implied. Aria stared at the sentence until the letters blurred. No emotional claim. That was perfect, she thought. It meant she could help her father, pay the hospital, maybe finish school and still walk away with her pride. She signed it. Later that day, she found herself in the back seat of a sleek black car, watching the city drift past. The driver said nothing. The building they stopped at was glass and steel, rising over the skyline like a mirror to the storm. Ethan was waiting in the lobby. Gone was the careless arrogance of the bar. He wore a gray suit, precise, cold. "Miss West," he greeted, his voice controlled. "I assume you read everything." "I did," she said, "and I signed it." He nodded once. "Then let us be clear. This marriage is for show. There will be photographers, interviews, and a private ceremony for the press. You will receive everything promised, but I expect you to follow my rules." Aria crossed her arms. "And those are?" "No drinking in public events, no interviews without clearance, no talking about the dare. You will attend 5 official functions, and you will act like a wife. Polite, composed, predictable." "Predictable," she repeated, her tone dry. "Sounds like a dream." Ethan ignored the sarcasm. "We will present this as a whirlwind romance. My team has already prepared your wardrobe. You will meet the stylist in 1 hour." She let out a small laugh. "You plan everything, do you not?" "I do not like chaos," he said. She tilted her head. "Then you should not have married me." For a moment, something flickered in his expression, almost a smile, almost regret. Then it vanished. "The press conference is tomorrow. Get some rest." That night, Aria stood before the mirror in the guest room of his penthouse. The city lights glimmered through the rain, the noise below faint and distant. On the dresser lay a silk dress she had never owned, a diamond bracelet she could never afford. It all looked like someone else's life. Her phone buzzed again. It was a message from the hospital. "Your father's treatment is approved. Payment confirmed." Her knees went weak. She sat down slowly, pressing a hand to her mouth. Ethan had already transferred the money. No words, no message, no reminder of the deal, just action. For the first time since last night, she let herself breathe. Maybe this was not love. Maybe it was not even trust. But it was survival, and survival was something she understood. Across the city, Ethan stood on his balcony, the storm wrapping around the glass tower. Marcus's laughter still echoed in his head. Pick a girl and marry her. He had done it, but the victory tasted like ash. Somewhere deep inside, under all the pride and control, a strange curiosity began to grow. Who was the girl who looked him in the eye and called him soulless in front of the world? He did not know yet. But tomorrow, she would walk beside him as his wife on paper, in photographs, and in every headline. And for the first time in years, Ethan Cole was not sure if he was winning anything at all. The morning of the ceremony arrived with a pale sun pushing through the storm clouds. Reporters lined the steps of City Hall, flashes bursting like lightning as the black limousine rolled to a stop. Ethan stepped out first, composed, flawless in a navy suit. He turned, extended a hand, and Aria stepped into the light. She wore a simple white dress that brushed the ground, nothing like the gowns his publicist had suggested. Her hair was loose, her expression unreadable. The crowd shouted questions. Is it true it started with a dare? But she kept walking, chin lifted. The click of cameras followed her like a heartbeat. Inside, the ceremony was private and brief. A city clerk read the vows while the photographers waited outside. Ethan's assistant, Marcus, stood as witness, his smirk faint but visible. Aria's voice trembled only once when she said, "I do." Ethan's reply was steady, rehearsed. A flash from a camera sneaked through the glass doors, catching the moment they were declared husband and wife. Afterward, the newlyweds sat in the back of the car, silence hanging between them. The city blurred past in streaks of gray and silver. Aria stared out the window, feeling the weight of the ring on her hand. It glittered cold and heavy, like a chain. Ethan finally spoke. "The press dinner is at 7. You will have a team to help with hair and wardrobe. It will be the first public appearance as Mrs. Cole." She turned her head slowly. "You make it sound like a job interview." It is not far from that," he replied. "We both signed contracts. We play our parts. We walk away clean." Aria looked down at her hands. "Clean," she repeated softly, as if testing the word. "I wonder if that is even possible anymore." He did not answer. The driver turned onto the expressway, and for a while only the hum of the tires filled the space between them. When they arrived at the penthouse, the place felt colder than she remembered. The marble floors gleamed like mirrors, and the walls echoed their footsteps. An assistant led her to her suite across the hall from his. She unpacked the few clothes she had brought, a leather jacket, jeans, sketchbook, and felt small in the vast room. A few hours later, the stylist arrived with racks of dresses and trays of jewelry. Arya endured the fittings quietly, eyes drifting to the window where the city shimmered under evening lights. By 7 o'clock, she looked every bit the image of a millionaire's bride. The dinner took place in a ballroom overlooking the harbor. The tables sparkled under golden chandeliers. When they entered together, the crowd erupted in applause. Ethan smiled for the cameras, one arm resting lightly at her waist. To everyone else, it looked natural. To her, it felt like acting on a stage that might collapse any minute. During the meal, reporters hovered near their table. One bold journalist leaned in. "Mrs. Cole, people are saying your marriage began as a dare. What do you say to that?" Arya's fork paused midair. She felt Ethan tense beside her, his hand tightening slightly on his glass. Then she set the fork down and met the reporter's gaze. "I say people can believe what they want," she answered calmly. "But if it was a dare, then maybe he lost more than he expected to." A soft murmur rippled through the room. Ethan's jaw flexed, but his eyes held a trace of something: admiration, maybe surprise. He reached over, covering her hand briefly before releasing it. "My wife has always known how to speak her mind," he said, turning back to the cameras. "That is what I like about her." After the dinner, they returned to the penthouse. The city glowed below, restless and alive. Arya stepped out onto the balcony, the night air cool against her skin. Behind her, Ethan loosened his tie, his reflection blending with hers in the glass door. "You handled yourself well tonight," he said. "I was not performing for you," she replied without turning. "I was performing for survival." He studied her for a moment. "You think I do not know what that feels like?" She faced him then, her eyes sharp. "Do you? You have power, wealth, control. You do not know what it means to fight for the next breath." Ethan exhaled slowly. "You think I have not fought? You have no idea what it costs to keep an empire from collapsing." Their eyes locked, the distance between them charged and fragile. For the first time, the silence felt less like hostility and more like recognition. Arya turned back to the view, her voice quiet. "Maybe we are both trapped by what we built." Ethan looked at her profile against the city lights and said softly, "Maybe." "Oh?" For a long time they stood there, two strangers bound by paper and pride, watching the lights flicker across the dark water. When she finally walked back inside, the contract on the nightstand seemed smaller somehow, just paper, nothing more. Yet deep inside, something had shifted. The dare had become real in ways neither of them had planned. Morning sunlight filtered through the wide glass windows of the penthouse, painting soft gold across the marble floor. Arya woke to silence, broken only by the distant hum of the city below. For the first time in days, there were no cameras, no stylists, no strangers adjusting her smile, just her heartbeat and the echo of Ethan's words from the night before. "Maybe we are both trapped by what we built." She dressed simply, pulling on jeans and a plain white shirt. In the kitchen, the chef greeted her with polite surprise. "Good morning, Mrs. Cole. Mr. Cole has a full schedule today, but he asked that breakfast be served for two. 2 plates sat on the counter, pancakes, strawberries, coffee. The sight almost made her laugh. It was too normal for the world they lived in. She sat down just as Ethan entered, already dressed in his usual precision gray suit, crisp tie, every button closed. "Good morning," he said. "Morning," she replied without looking up. He sat across from her, poured coffee, and studied her for a moment. "You surprised me last night." "How so?" "Most people would have hidden behind my name. You faced them." Arya smiled faintly. "You wanted a wife for the headlines. I gave them one." He almost smiled but caught himself. "There is a charity gala this weekend. It will be your first major event. You will meet investors, families, politicians. Be ready for questions." She raised an eyebrow. "And what am I supposed to say?" "Say what you always say," Ethan replied. "The truth, but the version that will not destroy me." "Understood," she said, though her tone made him glance up again. Later that day, she followed him to his company headquarters. Cole Dynamics towered above the city like a monument to ambition. The moment she stepped inside, whispers followed her. Assistants glanced up from their screens. Executives pretended to work, but their curiosity filled the air like static. Ethan moved through the lobby without hesitation. He was in his element here, focused, commanding. Arya trailed behind, feeling the strange weight of a world built on order and fear. Inside the top-floor office, he gestured for her to sit. "This is where everything happens," he said. "The reason I cannot afford mistakes." She walked to the window, gazing at the skyline. "Do you ever look down from here and wonder what the people below see when they look up?" Ethan paused. "They see success. Or distance," she said softly. "Maybe both." The rest of the week unfolded like rehearsal for a play neither of them fully understood. Arya learned how to move through the crowd, how to smile at investors without losing herself. The stylist taught her which colors softened her image. Ethan corrected her posture during mock interviews. They argued. They laughed once or twice, and then they returned to silence. By the night of the gala, the transformation was complete. Arya stood before the mirror in a sleek black gown, her hair twisted into a smooth knot. She looked like someone born into this world, not borrowed from another. When Ethan appeared in the doorway, even he hesitated. "You look—" He stopped himself, clearing his throat. Ready to pretend," she said, picking up her clutch. They arrived together, flashbulbs exploding, reporters shouting questions over the music. Ethan guided her through the crowd with a practiced hand at her back. At the center of the room stood a cluster of board members and social elites. Among them was Victoria Hale, Ethan's former fiancée, dressed in red, her smile sharp as glass. "Ethan," Victoria greeted sweetly, "I see your taste has become unconventional." Arya met her eyes without flinching. Unconventional tends to be more honest. The table laughed nervously. Ethan's fingers brushed against Arya's wrist a silent thank you. As the night went on, Arya moved among strangers who measured worth in numbers and names. She answered questions with grace, turned gossip into quiet strength. For once, she did not feel like a prop. She felt visible. Later, as the band slowed to a gentle rhythm, Ethan offered his hand. "Dance with me." She hesitated. "That was not in the contract." He smiled. "Consider it a temporary clause." She placed her hand in his, and they stepped onto the dance floor. The music swelled, lights softened, and the noise around them faded. For a brief moment, the distance between them disappeared. "You are not what I expected," Ethan said quietly. "Neither are you," Arya replied. "You are almost human tonight." He laughed under his breath. "Do not ruin the illusion." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, something fragile, dangerous, and real. When the song ended, applause echoed, cameras flashed, and the illusion shattered. But as Ethan led her off the floor, his hand lingered on hers just a moment too long. That night, back at the penthouse, Arya stood by the window, the city lights flickering against the glass. She whispered to her reflection, "You said yes for the money. Remember that." Yet somewhere deep inside, a part of her was no longer sure that was the whole truth. Rain returned to Los Angeles 2 nights after the gala, soft and steady, the kind that blurred city lights into watercolor. Arya sat on the edge of the balcony, barefoot, her hair damp from the mist. The dress from the gala hung over a chair behind her, black silk now lifeless. She kept replaying the night, the dance, the cameras, the way Ethan's hand had tightened around hers as if something real had slipped through the act. Inside, she heard the faint sound of footsteps. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened, his eyes tired. He had been on calls all day with the board. She knew that much. The press coverage had been a triumph, the company's stock rising overnight. To the world, they were the perfect couple. To her, it still felt like a script she had not written. "You will catch a cold," he said. "Then maybe I will get a day off," she replied, not turning around. He sighed, stepping closer. "You did well at the gala. Even my mother called. She said she has not seen me smile in years." "Maybe she should look closer," Arya said quietly. Ethan leaned against the railing beside her. The city stretched below, endless and glittering. "You think I do not know how fake this looks?" he asked. "Half the people in that room were waiting for us to fail. They wanted a scandal, not a marriage." Arya looked at him for a long moment. Maybe what they saw was 2 people pretending so hard that they started to forget why. He turned his head toward her, his expression unreadable. "And what did you see?" "I saw a man who is lonely, even in a crowd," she said softly. "And maybe I saw myself, the same way." The silence between them was heavy but not hostile. The rain pattered on the railing, gentle and rhythmic. Then Ethan's phone buzzed on the table inside. He ignored it at first, but when it rang again, He sighed and answered. Arya watched his face change. His voice dropped, clipped, and sharp. No, that information was not supposed to leave the boardroom. A pause. Who leaked it? When he hung up, his jaw was tight. Someone inside the company sold details of the new merger. It could cost us millions. Arya frowned. Can you fix it? I always fix it, he said, though his voice carried more exhaustion than confidence. Later that night, Ethan worked in his office, the glow of his computer reflecting in his glasses. Arya passed by the door, hesitated, and stepped inside with 2 cups of coffee. He looked up in surprise. You drink too much of this, she said, placing one on his desk. He smiled faintly. I thought you did not care. I do not, she said, sitting across from him. But caffeine keeps you from collapsing, and I need my rent paid. For the first time, he laughed genuinely, quietly. It filled the room in a way that startled both of them. They worked side by side for hours, Ethan explaining contracts, Arya asking questions. She noticed how his expression softened when he spoke about design, about creating technology that could actually help people. It was a different side of him, less CEO, more dreamer. When she finally stood to leave, he stopped her. Arya, he said, his tone low. You asked me once why I took the dare. I told you it was a game, but the truth is, I think I wanted someone to look at me and not see a number. She froze, her hand on the doorframe. Then maybe stop living like one, she said softly, and left. The next morning, tabloids exploded with a new headline. Ethan Cole's marriage in trouble. Photos from the gala were everywhere, one freeze, frame showing Arya turning away during the dance. The media called it tension. Investors called it instability. By noon, reporters were waiting outside the building. Ethan's publicist stormed into his office. You need to issue a statement. Deny the rumors. Schedule another public appearance. Ethan glanced at Arya, who stood quietly near the window. No, he said. No more pretending. If they want truth, they will get it. That evening, he took her to the Community Art Center downtown, an old warehouse that funded local artists. Arya stopped in confusion when she saw the crowd waiting inside. Cameras, lights, and a new banner. The Dare Collection, curated by Arya Cole. She turned to him, stunned. What is this? A space for your work, he said simply. You once told me you wanted to make something that lasts longer than money. So here it is. Her throat tightened. Why would you do this for me? Because I am tired of people thinking this marriage was a stunt, he said. You changed the story, Arya. I just want to help you finish it. She looked around the room, the sketches she had hidden in her notebook now framed on the walls, the press watching silently. She turned back to him, her voice trembling. You did not have to do this. I know, Ethan said, but I wanted to. As the cameras flashed, she realized something had shifted again. The lines between fake and real, between contract and connection, had blurred beyond repair. When they left the gallery that night, rain was falling once more. Ethan opened the car door for her, but she hesitated, standing under the awning. This started as a dare, she said, and now I do not even know what it is. Ethan looked at her through the rain. Maybe it is the first thing that has ever been real for both of us. She did not answer. But when she finally stepped into the car, her hand found his without thinking, and neither of them let go. The following days moved quietly, as if the world had stopped to catch its breath after the chaos. The Dare collection went viral overnight. Every media outlet wrote about the rebellious bartender turned art curator and the cold millionaire who might not be so cold after all. The headlines should have felt like victory, but inside Ethan's penthouse, silence settled like dust. Arya spent most of her mornings at the gallery, working with volunteers, hanging paintings, organizing new exhibits. It was the first time she had touched her own dreams in years, and it scared her, because every time she turned around, she expected the illusion to vanish, the contract to end, the headlines to change, Ethan to disappear back into the world he ruled. One evening, she came home late. The city glowed below, streets wet from a passing rain. She found Ethan in the living room, tie loosened, staring at a wall of news screens. The expression on his face was not pride, it was worry. What happened? She asked. He looked up slowly. Someone from the board leaked internal audits. They are accusing me of using company funds to sponsor the gallery. Her stomach dropped. That is not true. They do not care about truth, Ethan said. They care about control. They want me out. She stepped closer. Then fight it. Tell them the gallery was personal, not business. His eyes darkened. If I say that, they will demand proof. They will see the transfers from my account to the hospital, the tuition payments for your father, everything. Arya's chest tightened. So now helping me is a crime? It could be the end of everything I built, he said quietly. For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the rain outside filled the space. Finally, she said, then maybe you should tell them the truth that you did it because you care. He gave a bitter laugh. Care does not exist in boardrooms. Only profit. Arya turned away, her voice trembling. Then I feel sorry for you. That night, Ethan's lawyers advised him to issue a statement distancing himself from her. It is the only way to save your seat, they insisted. But when he looked at the prepared speech, something inside him broke. He saw the words temporary arrangement and personal misunderstanding, and he knew that if he read them aloud, everything real between them would die. The next morning, Arya woke to find her phone buzzing. News outlets were running live coverage of Ethan Cole's emergency press conference. She rushed to the television. Ethan stood behind a podium, surrounded by cameras. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with defiance. Yes, he said, I funded the gallery. I did it because I believe in what it stands for. I did it because the woman beside me reminded me what integrity looks like. This was never about business or image. It was about learning what it means to be human again. Reporters shouted questions. Someone yelled, so the marriage was real? Ethan looked straight into the cameras. It became real the moment she taught me how to feel. Arya covered her mouth, tears blurring her vision. In that instant, she knew his career might never recover, but he had chosen her instead. By evening, the internet exploded with reactions. Some called him reckless. Others called him brave. The board suspended him pending review, but Ethan looked lighter than he had in months. When he returned home, Arya was waiting by the window, her sketchbook open on her lap. They fired you, she said quietly. He shrugged. They freed me. She stood, crossing the room slowly. You did not have to do that. Yes, I did, he said, because for once I wanted to do something that was not calculated. She stared at him, unsure whether to thank him or yell at him. Instead, she whispered, You are insane. He smiled faintly. Possibly, but I am also done pretending. Ugh. The silence stretched again, warm this time, alive. Then Arya reached into her pocket and pulled out the folded contract, the same one that had once defined their boundaries. She tore it in half, the paper splitting cleanly in the quiet room. Ethan blinked. What are you doing? Ending the dare, she said. If you want to be here, you stay without a deal. No clauses, no conditions. He took a slow breath and nodded. Then I stay. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline, shaking the glass. Rain began to fall harder, tracing silver lines down the windows. Arya stepped closer until she was standing right in front of him. Everything that happens after this, she said softly, will be real. Ethan met her gaze, his voice barely above a whisper. Then let it be real. Embo. And for the first time since that night at the rooftop bar, they kissed not as a transaction, not as a dare, but as two people who had finally stopped running from the truth. The storm raged around them, but inside, it felt like calm at last. Morning came softly, the storm finally gone. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the penthouse, warm and steady for the first time in weeks. Arya woke curled against Ethan, the sound of the city faint beyond the glass. For a long moment, she stayed still, afraid that moving would break the fragile peace they had found. When she finally sat up, Ethan was already awake, watching her quietly. His voice was rough from sleep. You are not running away this time, she smiled faintly. Neither are you. He reached for her hand, brushing his thumb across her fingers. The board will come after me. The investors will want answers. I might lose everything. Maybe losing everything is how you start over, she said softly. You are not your company, Ethan. You never were. He studied her face, the truth in her words settling deep inside him. For the first time in years, he did not feel the pressure to win. He just wanted to live. Later that morning, they left the penthouse and drove downtown. The gallery stood open, filled with morning light and the smell of fresh paint. Volunteers were already there, setting up for the next exhibit. When they saw Ethan, whispers rippled through the room, some grateful, some uncertain. He was no longer the man in control, but no one could deny what he had done. Arya walked beside him, her voice calm. You can still rebuild. Maybe not the same empire, but something better. Ethan looked around at the art on the walls, portraits of ordinary people, cityscapes in watercolor, sketches full of life. This is yours, he said. You do not need me here. She turned to him. Maybe not, but I want you here. There is a difference. That afternoon, the gallery opened to the public. Crowds wandered through, reporters snapping photos, children laughing near the murals. It was everything Arya had dreamed of, and yet, when she saw Ethan helping an older volunteer carry boxes, she realized something simple but true. This was what healing looked like. Not grand gestures or contracts, just quiet effort shared between two people who had already lost too much. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, they stepped outside. The city was calm, the streets glowing in amber light. Ethan slipped his hand into hers, the motion unplanned, but certain. Do you regret it? He asked. Any of it? She shook her head slowly. If we had not made that stupid dare, I would never have met you. So no, I do not regret it. He laughed under his breath. Then maybe it was not a mistake after all. Arya smiled, leaning against him as they walked down the quiet street. Maybe it was the best mistake we ever made. The words hung in the air like a promise. Somewhere behind them, the gallery lights glowed through the windows, casting their shadows together on the sidewalk. For once, there was no audience, no contract, no pretending, only two people walking side by side, finally free from the storm. Weeks passed, and life began to rebuild itself around them. The headlines faded, the scandals lost their edge, and people slowly stopped whispering when they saw Ethan Cole's name. He had stepped down officially from the company, handing control to the board, and for the first time, he seemed lighter. He spent most mornings at the gallery now, helping Arya organize events for young artists. It was not the world he had built, but it was the one that finally felt real. On a warm afternoon, the gallery hosted a community showcase. Paintings from students lined the walls, music drifted through the open doors, and laughter filled the space. Arya moved through the crowd, her hair tied loosely, a paint smudge on her wrist. When she saw Ethan kneeling to talk to a teenage artist about his work, she could not help but smile. This was a man who used to measure worth in profit margins. Now he measured it in brushstrokes and stories. Later, when the crowd thinned, Arya found him standing by the window, looking out at the city that had once defined him. You know, she said softly, you are terrible at staying retired. He turned, a quiet smile in his eyes. Maybe I am better at starting over. She laughed. You are definitely better at sweeping floors and fixing lights. Someone has to keep the place from falling apart, he said. And I am good with my hands. Her heart stuttered at the quiet warmth in his tone. It was not flirtation anymore. It was home. As evening fell, the last guests left, and the gallery became silent again. Arya walked to the center of the room where a single canvas stood covered by a cloth. There is one piece left, she said, gripping the edge of the fabric. You have not seen it yet. Ethan tilted his head. Whose is it? Mine, she said, and pulled the cloth away. Underneath was a painting unlike anything else in the room. It showed a woman standing in the rain beneath a glass building, her reflection merging with a man's shadow inside. Between them was a single word written faintly in white dare. Ethan's breath caught. You painted this? She nodded. It is where it all began. He stepped closer, tracing the lines of color with his eyes. It feels like forgiveness, he said quietly. Maybe it is, she replied. I was angry for a long time. At the world, at you, at myself for saying yes that night. But if I had not, I would not have learned that love is not a contract. It is a choice you make every day. Ethan looked at her, emotion flickering behind his calm exterior. Then let me choose. Arya blinked, unsure what he meant until he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black box. Her breath caught. Ethan. He opened it. Inside was a simple silver ring. Nothing like the one from their staged wedding. No diamonds, no extravagance, just something honest, real. I lost everything that made me powerful, he said. And somehow I found the only thing that makes me whole. I do not want another contract, Arya. I want a promise. Her hands trembled as she covered her mouth. You are serious? He smiled faintly. For once, yes. Marry me. For real this time. No cameras, no money, just us. The gallery was silent except for the faint hum of the city outside. Arya stared at him, her heart pounding the way it had the first night they met. Only now it was not fear, it was certainty. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Yes. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, his hand steady. Then it is settled. The dare is over. Arya laughed softly through the tears. No, she whispered. It just changed its meaning. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as the lights dimmed around them. The world outside kept moving, indifferent to the moment. But inside that quiet gallery, time stood still. Later, as they locked up and stepped into the warm night air, Ethan looked at the sign above the door, the Dare Collection, and smiled. "We should keep the name," he said. "It suits us." Arya laced her fingers through his. "Because we were foolish enough to try?" He shook his head. "Because we were brave enough to love." They walked together down the street, their shadows stretching across the pavement, merging into one. The city that had once cheered and judged them now felt silent, almost tender, as if it had been waiting for this ending all along. For the first time since that reckless night at the rooftop bar, there were no deals, no dares, only truth. And the truth was simple. They had both lost their pride to find their hearts. And this time, it was forever. Thank you so much for watching until the end of this story. If it touched your heart or made you believe in love again, please take a moment to subscribe. It is quick, free, and it helps us keep creating meaningful stories like this one. Your support truly keeps this channel alive and growing. Before you go, tell us where are you watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below so we know where our stories are reaching hearts around the world. Once again, thank you for being part of this journey. Stay kind, stay hopeful, and we will see you in the next story.